Commander, let's light the sky. Training sharper drone pilots, learning how to fly. Mission ready mindset, safety leading every plan. Skills that build confidence from takeoff through the scan. Tune in at Sky Commander, come join the crew today. Learning smart, fly with purpose, level up your way. We see more, no sooner, that's the edge we're here to spread. See above, go beyond, get ahead.
Okay, let's get started.
I want you to picture a scenario that is honestly practically universal. Like if you've ever flown a drone, or even if you've just tried to, back a massive truck into a really tight parking spot using only a backup camera, you know this feeling.
Oh, absolutely. Everyone knows that exact feeling.
Right. So you're flying, weather is perfect. You're doing this sweeping cinematic pass right next to a really dense row of trees. You're looking down at your high-definition screen, framing is flawless. You look up at the actual drone in the sky. Everything feels completely under control.
It feels easy.
Exactly. And then, literally without warning, a branch violently fills the entire camera feed. The drone twitches, the obstacle avoidance starts just screaming this high-pitched warning, and for a fraction of a second, your stomach just totally drops out.
Yep, the classic panic moment.
You jam the sticks back, the drone stops, and you let out this breath you didn't even realize you were holding. You didn't crash, but you were, inches away from shattered plastic.
Yeah.
And a totally ruined day.
And that specific fraction of a second is, it's arguably the most misunderstood moment in modern aviation.
Really? Misunderstood?
Yeah, because the vast majority of operators just brush it off. They, give a nervous laugh, maybe blame a sudden gust of wind or just bad luck, and then they go right back to flying the exact same way. They treat it as this weird anomaly.
Which is exactly why we are doing this deep dive today. We are pulling directly from a massive stack of training manuals from the Sky Commander Flight Academy. Specifically, their curriculum on human factors and this doctrine they call clearance overconfidence.
It's such a brilliant doctrine, honestly.
It really is. So the mission for this deep dive is to figure out why human perception, our eyes and our tech, fails us so spectacularly in those tight moments. Because what the Sky Commander data reveals is that a near miss with a tree branch isn't a flying problem. It's a deeply fascinating psychological and perceptual problem.
To kind of set the stage here, I want you to imagine our background shifting from a standard studio to this sprawling, high-resolution canopy of trees layered with complex flight telemetry. Because honestly, this isn't just about drones. It's a masterclass in how the human brain processes uncertainty and how we just invent false confidence when we don't have enough data.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah.
Because the manuals completely reframe the whole event. A near miss matters because it exposes this hidden weakness in human judgment. It's the exact moment where our confidence completely outpaces our confirmation of reality.
Right, because if we accept that a near miss isn't just, bad hand-eye coordination, we have to look at the anatomy of the failure. And the text introduces this concept called the branch strike pyramid.
The pyramid. Yeah, I love this model.
It's highly effective. It suggests that the physical branch scraping the prop is just the final mathematical certainty of a much longer chain of failures. At the very top, you have the visible event, right? The close call. But that rests on the layer below it, which is the control issue.
Meaning the pilot actually commanded the drone into that bad spot.
Exactly. But why did they make that input? That drops us to the perception issue. The pilot moved the drone there because their brain misjudged the depth or the angle or the speed.
And obviously that doesn't just happen out of nowhere.
Right. The perception failure is supported by the planning issue. The pilot went into a complex space without a defined standoff distance, no hard stop gate. And at the absolute base of the pyramid is the culture issue. They kept going simply because it, quote, looked fine. They lacked a disciplined internal rule set.
I think about it like a Jenga tower. The drone flight is the top block. But you've already removed all the foundational blocks of planning and culture before you even took off. So by the time you're near the tree, the tower is doomed. It's just waiting for a breeze.
That's a perfect way to put it. The worst question a pilot can ask after a near miss is, how did I almost hit the tree?
Wait, why is that the worst question?
Because it externalizes the blame. You blame the wind, the stick's sensitivity, the lighting. The professional question is, what did I believe that was wrong?
Ah, I see. What did I believe that was wrong?
Exactly. You have to deconstruct the belief chain. Did you believe the tree line was totally flat? Did you believe the camera was showing you the whole risk?
Okay, but let me push back on this perception layer for a second.
Right.
If the drone is hovering right there in the sky and I'm standing like 50 meters away looking directly at it, how can my belief be so wrong? I literally have eyes on it. It's a physical object. The tree is a physical object.
What's fascinating here is that the human brain absolutely hates uncertainty. We think of our vision as this precision laser rangefinder, but it's really a highly subjective interpretation system.
So my eyes are basically just guessing.
Pretty much. At close range, say within 10 meters, your binocular vision having two eyes with a slight angle difference gives you robust 3D depth perception. But at 50 meters, that binocular advantage is gone. The angles are too narrow.
So what does the brain do?
It shifts to monocular cues. And when that visual data is weak, the visual cortex doesn't just throw up an error message that says insufficient data. It engages in predictive processing. It just hands your conscious mind a complete, seamless, and highly confident guess.
Wow. So it tells me I'm safe even when I'm not.
Exactly. You experience that guess as objective reality. The hazard was always there. You just realize the geometry too late.
Think about how wild that is for you, the listener, in your own professional life. How often do you mistake a confident guess for a confirmed fact? Just because something feels familiar, we assume it's safe. Which brings us to the regulations. Because if our eyes are just guessing at a distance, the legal definition of seeing the drone has to be way more rigorous, right?
Oh, absolutely. In the U.S., it's the FAA's Part 107, and in Canada, Transport Canada's CARS. Both of them treat visual line of sight, or VLOS, not as just spotting a dot in the sky, but as an active performance standard.
Right, the language is super specific. It requires unaided visual contact to know the location, altitude, attitude, and to avoid hazards.
And that word unaided is key. You can wear glasses, sure, but you can't use binoculars to establish your primary line of sight. Transport Canada and the FAA don't care if you can spot the drone with a telescope. They care if you can understand the airspace.
Sky Commander has that mnemonic for this, right? VLOS. Vision locates, orients, scans.
Yes. If you can locate the drone, but you can't tell which way the nose is pointing, you can't orient it or scan for other hazards, your VLOS has degraded below the legal and safety threshold.
The source text has this great analogy. It's like
Physical clearance is more than just the plastic footprint of the drone. You have to account for the dynamic volume, the spinning props, the payload, and critically, the aerodynamic envelope. When you brake hard, the drone pitches back. The rear props dip lower. If your physical clearance doesn't account for that braking posture, you'll hit the branch while trying to stop.
Right, but what about visual clearance? Because the text says you can have perfect physical clearance, but zero visual clearance.
Yeah, imagine you're flying a dark gray drone 10 meters from some dense pine trees. The physical distance is totally safe, but it's late afternoon, flat lighting, and the drone just visually blends into the dark foliage.
So you can see it, but you can't really read it.
Exactly. You can't detect minor drifts. The environment stole your visual clearance. And then there's control clearance. Let's say you can see it perfectly and you have distance, but there's a huge 20-knot wind pushing you toward the tree.
You don't have the margin to react.
Right. You lack the kinetic buffer to arrest the momentum before hitting the hazard. Control clearance is having the space to absorb an error.
And finally, consequence clearance, which I think is the most professional mindset shift, because it basically assumes you're going to crash, right?
Pretty much. It asks, once I hit the obstacle, where does gravity take this thing? Hitting a branch over an empty grass field is low consequence. Hitting that exact same branch over a public sidewalk or an expensive client asset is a disaster. Professional operators calculate the blast radius of the failure, not just the probability of a strike.
So if true VLOS and these four clearances require so much rigor, what happens when the environment actively starts playing tricks on us? Because the manuals dive deep into the psychology of visual illusions.
The visual illusions are terrifying once you understand them. Because trees aren't solid boxes. They are three-dimensional hazard fields with really fuzzy boundaries.
Here's where it gets really interesting. The text outlines 5 specific illusions. The first one is the flat tree line.
Also known as the green wall illusion. From 50 meters away, a row of trees compresses into a flat wall. Your eye tracks to the thickest part, the trunks or the dense inner leaves. Your brain maps that dense part as the boundary.
But the actual boundary is all those invisible, thin outer branches reaching way out toward the drone.
Exactly. You think you're hovering safely away from the wall, but you're actually inside the invisible hazard zone. You have to judge the boundary by the newest branch you cannot clearly resolve.
Which means assuming the presence of unseen material. That's huge. Then we have illusion 2, The clean gap.
This is a trap of temptation. From the ground, a gap between two trees looks super wide. You can see the sky through it. But from the drone's angle, those branches might be overlapping on different depth planes.
Add the prop width and wind drift, and the gap just doesn't exist.
Right. If the gap looks exciting, it probably deserves suspicion.
Illusion 3 is the helpful screen, trusting the camera feed too much, which we'll tear into in a second. Illusion 4 is the sensor safety blanket.
This is the automation trap. It's like texting while driving just because your car has auto braking.
Okay.
The sensors have limits, and if you let them lower your vigilance, you're going to crash.
And the fifth illusion, which I want you, the listener, to really think about in your own job, the familiar obstacle.
Experience naturally breeds efficiency, but it also breeds complacency. You fly around a chimney 100 times, and your brain just normalizes the risk. You drop your guard.
It turns your experience into a liability. It's the normalization of deviance. The manuals literally call out the most dangerous sentence in flying. I'm probably fine.
Oh yeah. When your brain says I'm probably fine, it's explicitly admitting you don't have enough data. You're substituting hope for confirmation.
So we redefine the save point. The save point isn't when you yank the stick back to avoid the branch. The save point was 30 seconds earlier when the drone first got hard to see. You stop when you lose absolute proof of safety, not when you get proof of danger.
Which requires an incredible amount of discipline.
But wait, if my biological eyes are failing me, surely my high-tech 4K camera and my infrared obstacle avoidance sensors will save me, right? I spent $3,000 on this thing.
No, absolutely not. In fact, this brings us to the technological illusions, specifically the lying camera. The screen curates reality. It doesn't reflect it.
How does a camera lie? It's a live feed.
It starts with the lens. Most drones use wide-angle lenses to get those huge cinematic shots, but wide angles cause barrel distortion. They compress the center and stretch the edges.
So things on the edge look totally different than they actually are.
Exactly. An object on the edge of your screen looks significantly further away than it is in 3D space. You look at the monitor, seeing a comfortable gap, but the physical prop is millimeters from a strike. The camera is a framing tool, not a clearance instrument.
Okay, but what if I use a zoom lens? That doesn't have barrel distortion.
No, but it has depth compression. A telephoto lens visually flattens objects on vastly different depth planes. A power line and a building 50 meters behind it look like they are right next to each other. You have zero contextual data about your macro environment.
And then there's the gimbal, the thing keeping the shot totally smooth.
The gimbal is a masterpiece, but it's dangerous for navigation. A drone could be fighting a massive headwind, tilted back at a 30-degree angle, barely hanging on, but the gimbal keeps the horizon perfectly level. The pilot looks at the screen and thinks everything is calm.
Because the gimbal protects the shot, not the aircraft. The source text gives this amazing example of the sideways slide, the cinematic orbit.
Right. You center the camera on a beautiful house, and you slide the drone sideways to orbit it. The screen shows a stunning, perfectly framed house, and the path looks clear.
But the camera is pointing forward, and the drone is moving blindly to the left.
Exactly. The screen is telling the truth about the shot, but completely hiding the massive oak tree you are sliding laterally into.
This raises an important question, though. Shouldn't my lateral sensors see the tree and stop the drone?
They might see a solid trunk, but sensors notoriously struggle with thin branches, utility wires, and low contrast. If the sun is in the camera's eye, it's blinded.
And don't the sensors sometimes do weird things? Automation surprise.
Yes. If a sensor catches a thin branch at the very last second, it might break unevenly or suddenly vault upward to dodge it. The drone violently jerks, the pilot gets startled, thinks it's a malfunction, and jams the sticks the other way right into a secondary obstacle.
So the obstacle avoidance is basically a seatbelt. It's backup, not permission to fly closer.
Exactly. You have to fly as if the sensors are completely incapable of detecting the hazard.
Okay, so both our eyes and our tech are basically compromised. But what happens when the actual environment around the drone starts changing dynamically? Let's talk about environmental variables and the invisible safety bubble.
Because the airspace is never static. Take wind, for example. We know wind pushes the drone, but it also acts on the hazard. A tree canopy is highly elastic.
Right. A massive gust pushes the drone toward the tree, but it also blows the tree branches out toward the drone.
The gap closes from both sides simultaneously. You have to mentally model that the hazard is expanding and contracting.
And then there's background clutter, the signal-to-noise ratio.
This is a huge neurological factor. A white drone against a blue sky is easy to track. huge signal, low noise. But put that drone against a textured forest canopy or a city skyline, your visual cortex needs way more processing cycles to separate the drone from the background.
So a slow, insidious drift might not even register in your brain until you're already in the danger zone, which is why the manuals say we need to stop thinking in lines and start thinking in volumes.
Yes, the safety bubble. Novices visualize their flight path as a thin string. Professionals project an expanding and contracting bubble around the drone.
And that bubble has to include the drone, the prop wash, wind drift, braking distance, sensor lag, and your own reaction time.
And the size of that bubble is heavily dictated by ambient light. Think about golden hour.
Oh, photographers love golden hour.
It creates beautiful footage, but it swallows visual detail. The low sun creates blinding highlights and deep, impenetrable shadows on the trees. The drone flies in front of that shadow, and you lose all edge contrast. You can see the blinking strobe light, but you can't read the drone's orientation.
It's visible, but unreadable. And hiding in those shadows is what the manual calls the apex hazard, the hidden wire.
Wires are a nightmare. Service drops, guy wires, temporary cables. They offer almost zero surface area to reflect light. And your sensors, they will almost universally fail to see a quarter-inch wire at distance.
So you're hyper-focused on a big branch and you fly smoothly right through a cable.
The absolute rule is, in urban environments, assume a wire spans every visible gap until you can visually prove otherwise.
That's intense. And trees don't just snag the physical drone, they can sever your radio line of sight.
Yeah, dense foliage, especially wet leaves, absorbs radio frequencies perfectly. You drift behind some leaves, lose the command link, and the drone's failsafe kicks in. It decides to climb to reacquire signal and drives itself straight up into the heavy upper canopy.
What started as a tiny visual error becomes a total loss. Okay, so knowing all this is great, but how do you actually manipulate the control sticks to survive this nightmare?
This is where we get into precision pilotage. And ironically, the smarter our drones get, the worse our manual stick skills become. We rely on GPS holds and auto braking, so our hands get rusty.
Right, and the manual redefines stick skill. People think skill is flying super fast and threading a tiny gap for a YouTube video.
That's just high risk tolerance. Professional stick skill is profound restraint. It's the discipline to stop.
So what does this all mean for actually flying? Boring flying is safe flying. The primary rule is slow before close.
Right. Don't wait until you're near the tree to brake. Reduce speed long before depth perception degrades. It buys your brain processing time and shrinks your safety bubble.
The manuals also hammer on one-axis discipline.
Modern controllers let you mix inputs, fly forward, slide left, climb, and pan the camera all at once. In open air, it's beautiful. Near a hazard, it's cognitive overload. Your brain can't calculate forward clearance, wind drift, and optical distortion simultaneously.
So you separate them, move sideways, stop, climb, stop.
Exactly. It prevents compound spatial errors.
And the danger of yaw inputs, rotating the nose.
It scrambles your orientation. If the drone is facing away, pushing right moves it right. If you spin it 180 degrees to face you, the controls are inverted. Pushing right moves it to your visual left. If you do that near a tree, your muscle memory for escape vectors is completely compromised.
Which perfectly leads to the sin of backing out blindly. You fly in close for a shot, and then to reveal the scene, you just pull the stick straight back.
It is so incredibly dangerous. The camera points forward, so you have zero optical data about where you are flying backward. If you haven't physically cleared the airspace behind you, pulling reverse is gross negligence.
But ambiguity is going to happen eventually.
Yeah.
The light shifts, you misjudge depth. What do you do in that exact moment? The Academy teaches the 3-second rule.
Second 1, stop all inputs immediately. Second 2, identify why you're uncertain. Second 3, execute the safest exit based on confirmed data. And you vocalize it. Depth uncertain, holding.
Depth uncertain, holding. That phrase breaks the hypnotic trance of the screen.
It resets your priority from getting the shot to saving the aircraft.
And they practice this with the invisible wall drill. You don't practice near real trees. You pick a spot in an empty sky and try to break exactly on that invisible line at different speeds.
Right.
You master the kinetic energy in a safe environment.
Because tight spaces trigger the ego trap. A client asks for a risky shot through a gap, and you feel pressure to prove how good you are.
But true professional courage is evaluating the math, looking at the client and saying, not enough margin, resetting.
Exactly. Which brings us to crew resource management, because flying isn't solo. You have a visual observer, a VO. But an untrained buddy saying, hey man, watch out, you're close, is worse than nothing.
It just causes panic without data.
A professional VO uses command-first syntax. Stop. Tree left rear, 5 meters, hold.
It bypasses analytical processing and triggers a motor response. And managing the client pressure uses a specific script too. I'm going to reset this shot with more margin.
Notice what it doesn't do. It doesn't apologize. It projects calm, analytical competence that actually builds trust with the client.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, eventually you will have a near miss. You'll avoid a crash by millimeters. How do you handle it?
The post-flight debrief. If you just laugh it off, you're wasting free tuition. The sky scared you for free. You have to write a rigid rule.
You turn the fear into architecture. You don't just say, I'll be more careful. You make a rule. No lateral tracking within 15 meters without a VO.
It strips the shame and builds structural competence.
We have covered so much ground today. From the psychology of depth perception and the lies our screens tell us, to the invisible safety bubbles and the sheer power of saying, depth uncertain, holding.
It's a total paradigm shift. Eliminate unproven assumptions before you even take off.
But I want to leave you, our listener, with the final provocative thought. The manuals warn about the decay of manual stick skills as drones get more automated. Think about how that maps to our own daily lives as AI and automated tools take over our basic tasks. If we stop practicing the boring manual skills of our own jobs, what happens to our professional judgment? When the environment gets tight and the AI blinks out, will our critical thinking have decayed too far to even recognize the hazard?
It is the defining question right now. We can delegate the task, but we can never outsource the ultimate judgment.
You still have to be the pilot in command. Thank you for joining this deep dive. Keep your margins wide, keep your judgment sharp.
Yeah.
And remember, just because your eyes can see it doesn't mean your brain knows where the boundaries are. We'll catch you next time.
That's a wrap on today's mission, Commander. See above, go beyond, get ahead. For more training, tools, and intel, head to skycommander.ca. If you learned something new, share it, subscribe, and leave us a 5-star debrief.